I think Elias looked pretty good, is what Marco said. Now I know that I was sitting on my ass watching the game on TV, and Marco was standing on the Bruins bench in Montreal, so he had a bit of a closer viewpoint than I did. I'll give him that. He was closer to the action. He's calling the shots. What is he watching? What am I watching?
You're listening to the Puckups podcast. It's time to hit the ice with Brian D. Felice.
Welcome into episode 21 of the Puckups podcast. I am Brian D. Felice, and thank you all for joining me. On today's show, we're going to discuss the Bruins' 6-1 win over the Winnipeg Jets on Thursday night and the storylines that came from it, including the debut of forward Lukas Reichel. We'll also get to a mailbag to finish off the show. But before we do any of that, just a friendly reminder, if you haven't done so already, to please go ahead and subscribe to the Puckups on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else that you get your podcast. And if you want to get in touch with me or be a part of the show, you can email me, info@thepuckups.com. You can tweet at me on X @BrianDFelice_. You can tweet at the show @thepuckups, or you can comment on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, anywhere that the show has an account and posts content. Now, Thursday was a huge game for the Bruins going in, and as it turns out, an even bigger win, okay? Now, Boston had an amazing month of January, one of the best teams in the NHL in the month of January. You'll remember that they stumbled heavily in December. They had a 6-game losing streak heading into a New Year's Eve game against the Edmonton Oilers, and they snapped that losing streak, and for the next month, were one of the best teams, if not the best team in the NHL, okay? But then the calendar flipped to February and the Stadium Series game against Tampa Bay. And since that game, heading into Thursday night, Boston had lost 8 of their last 13 games and have pretty much been playing .500 hockey since the Olympic break concluded. The problem has been the teams around them and beneath them in the Eastern Conference playoff standings. They've all been winning. And Boston has been kind of living on the cushion that they built back in January, but that's going away. It's getting narrower and narrower, and it's at the point now where the Bruins are in as tight of a playoff race as there could possibly be. The good news for them is that they were able to get 2 points on Thursday against the Winnipeg Jets, a team that, quite frankly, if the Bruins want to make the playoffs, you have to be on home ice, because Winnipeg has been one of the worst teams in the Western Conference all season. They've had a bit of a push as of late, but still, if you're the Bruins, if you lose that game, then really at the end of an 82-game season, you can't look back and say we deserve to make the playoffs because we didn't take care of the games that we were supposed to. Okay, but again, fortunately for the Bruins, they did take care of business Thursday night, and we will get to it in short order. But some house cleaning to get to first and foremost, okay? We'll start off with the emergency call-up of forward Lukas Reichel. Now, Reichel, you'll remember the Bruins traded for at the deadline. They gave the Vancouver Canucks a 6th-round draft pick for Lukas Reichel. Reichel, a former first-round pick, 17th overall in 2020 to the Chicago Blackhawks, okay? And Reichel is the quintessential young player who has speed and skill, but the team that drafted him wasn't a fit. In fact, the team he went to next wasn't a fit in Vancouver. The Canucks traded a 4th-round pick to Chicago for Reichel, and the Bruins gave Vancouver a 6th-round pick. So, pretty good asset management, I guess, if you're the Bruins, and not so great if you're Vancouver. But Reichel, in my opinion, has been a low risk, high reward, or low risk, medium reward type of trade acquisition, because a 6th-round draft pick isn't going to turn into much. And Reichel, to his credit, heading into Thursday night did have 22 goals, 37 assists, and 59 points in the NHL in 188 games played. I don't want to spoil how he did against Winnipeg, but his totals actually increased since the game concluded on Thursday night. So I do think that Reichel is an interesting player for the Bruins to have traded for. I did expect him to get some looks in Boston this season, even though he started in Providence after the Bruins traded for him. But we will get to him and his game in a little bit here. The other thing I wanted to talk about heading into this game were the line combinations. We have talked about the need for Elias Lindholm and Morgan Geekie to step their game up for the Boston Bruins. They have been ice cold since the Olympic break concluded, in particular. And quite frankly, it is just the absolute worst time for two of your top six forwards, and Morgan Geekie, your top goal scorer, not just this season, but over the last calendar plus year, to go cold like this. You're in the middle of a playoff race. Every game matters. Every point matters. So for Geekie and Lindholm to have just completely disappeared, not just 5-on-5, but also on the power play over the last 10 plus games, heading into Thursday is just completely inoptimal. So with that said, the line combinations heading into Thursday night's game were David Pastrnak, Marat Husnudinov, and Fraser Minton, and I'll get to them in a second. Second line stayed the same of Pavel Zacha, Victor Arvidsson, and Casey Middlestad. Third line was Elias Lindholm centering Morgan Geekie and Lukas Reichel. And the fourth line stays the same of Kastelik, Jeannot, and Corrali. So I want to get to some comments after practice from head coach Marco Sturm about the recent play from the Elias Lindholm line, because Lindholm and Geekie played away from Pastrnak in Montreal, and they didn't look good at all. They looked terrible. So it's been a little bit now. It's been a couple of games since Geekie and Lindholm have been away from Pastrnak. I mean, Geekie's been away from Pastrnak pretty consistently lately. It was Elias Lindholm, Pastrnak, and Husnudinov. But still, Lindholm and Geekie were challenged in Montreal to really pick their games up. And they didn't play a great game yet again. So let's get to what Marco Sturm had to say about the Elias Lindholm line.
The Lindholm line, have they had the puck, possessed the puck enough to create offensive chances?
Yeah, no, they just gotta. I actually like Lindy's game better the last few games. I think he was good. I think Geeks, needs to move his feet a little bit better and just focus a little bit on a little bit of grinding game than just scoring goals. I think that's something he has to learn too. And been talking to him. So so hopefully, Lucas will give him a little bit of speed and protection in getting pucks, so they don't have to go back for pucks all the time.
Okay, there's a lot to chew on there. So, to be honest, let's start in chronological order from what Marco Sturm said in that comment. As it pertains to Elias Lindholm, I think Elias looked pretty good, is what Marco said. Now, I know that I was sitting on my ass watching the game on TV, and Marco was standing on the Bruins bench in Montreal. So he had a bit of a closer viewpoint than I did. I'll give him that. He was closer to the action. He's calling the shots. What is he watching? What am I watching? I'm not trying to be an asshole. I'm not trying to be pessimistic just to be pessimistic. Like, is it me? Was Elias Lindholm good in Montreal? I'm honestly speechless at that. It kind of feels like Marco is tirelessly trying to build Elias up and not put him down, not put a man down when he's not playing his best. I can appreciate that. Maybe he knows something about Elias that the public doesn't. Maybe he knows something he's battling through, an injury he's dealing with. Sure, that's all possible. Sure. But then he turns around and buries Geeky and says, I think Geeky needs to move his feet more, which, by the way, is 1,000% correct. That assessment is 1,000% correct. I'm glad Marco Sturm said that about Morgan Geeky, because to me, Morgan Geeky has been a guy who has been relying a lot on his release and his high shooting percentage the last year plus. I think that even when he's going, I feel like sometimes Morgan struggles to be a play driver. I think Morgan sometimes struggles to create havoc and turnovers on the opposition. And that's even when he's going. When Morgan's going, he's a finisher, but he's not a disruptor. And he's not a single-handed generator or playmaker. And that's okay. You don't have to be everything. But when you're not going and you're not scoring, you're not generating, you're not forechecking hard enough, you're not back checking hard enough, I agree. I agree with Marco Sturm in his assessment of Morgan Geeky prior to Thursday night. Okay. I think that what are you doing when you're not scoring? What are you doing when you're not producing to help your team? Because there are a plethora, and I'm going to say that word once again, a plethora of ways to help your team when you're not scoring. Okay. Hockey is very much about scoring. It's about outscoring your opposition. But how do you outscore? There's a million things you can do to help your team score and to help yourself score. So I haven't seen his defensive details be nearly good enough. I haven't seen his forechecking be nearly good enough. His checking in general, his back checking, his angling, his will to win, really. And I know that sounds harsh, but I know he has it within him. And I just think that sometimes when you're struggling, it's easy to get down on yourself and get woe is me. And some players, they do whatever they can to break out of a slump, and other guys hope it goes in for them. And I do think that was Marco sending a message to Morgan that, hey, listen, we're not disappointed in you simply because you're not scoring right now. It's because you're not doing the little things outside of scoring to help a team win a game. Now, again, that may be strong. I think over the last 10 games, you can certainly find spot moments where Geeky's made a good play here or had a good forecheck there. I'm not saying that he has been completely invisible and wearing a Harry Potter invisibility cloak for the last 12 games. There are certain things I'm sure he's doing that he's not getting the credit for by the casual fan or even by myself. But by and large, he has not been good enough nor nearly effective enough. But why can't you say the same thing about Elias Lindholm if you're Marco Sturm? That's what I don't get. Why bury Geeky but not be a little bit more honest about Elias? Maybe he thinks that Elias is trying harder than Geeky. He's just not good enough right now. I don't know. But in any event, I found those comments to be interesting because, I don't know, everybody with a pair of eyes could have said that Elias Lindholm wasn't good in Montreal. Okay. But I mean, he had one play in overtime where I actually gasped before it happened because I thought he was going to turn the puck over and give Montreal a 2-on-0. But he actually found a way to hold on to the puck and do a bank pass off the boards for a 2-on-1 that Mason Lohrei, I believe, had in overtime that I think maybe Lane Hudson slid and disrupted. But anyway, so I found those comments funny by Sturm. The third comment he made in that media availability was that he thinks that Lukas Reichel can help Geeky and Lindholm. And basically what it sounded like was because Reichel has better speed, he's going to be able to do a lot of the dirty work with the forechecking and back checking. Sturm even said something along those lines about doing XYZ for those guys. And I don't know. I think maybe that's a little bit letting Geeky and Lindholm off the hook, but I know what he's saying. It's true. I mean, the fact that Reichel's a great skater, he will be better on the forecheck than those guys. And so I hear what Mark was saying. And the reality is, as it played out on Thursday night, that's exactly what ended up happening. Because not to spoil the take here, but Elias Lindholm and Morgan Geeky both played much better on Thursday against Winnipeg. Now the whole team did in a 6-1 win, but Lukas Reichel brought to that line exactly what on paper you thought he was going to provide. A guy with speed and skill who can kind of drag his line mates along with him. If you have if Elias Lindholm and Morgan Geeky have a speedster line mate with them, you kind of have no choice but to try to keep up, because otherwise it's just not going to work. So that was a positive. David Pastrnak against the Jets opened the scoring for Boston. His 27th of the year. I believe David now has an 8-game point streak. He has 12 points in the last 8 games, 5 goals, 7 assists. And in at least the first 6 or 7 games of this point streak, he wasn't clicking the way that he usually does, but he was still producing. But now you're starting to see him produce the way he wants to and the way that he can. And this first goal against Winnipeg was a thing of beauty. He bats a clear attempt straight up out of the air and outweighs Connor Hellebuck, an all-world goalie. We all saw what Hellebuck did for Team USA at the Olympics, and just goes 5-hole on Hellebuck on the ice, gives Boston the 1-0 lead. Shortly before that, Jeremy Swayman had a beautiful stop on Mark Scheifele on a 2-on-1 for Winnipeg. Now, the Jets, before the Boston Bruins took a 1-0 lead, Winnipeg did have 2 or 3 odd man rushes in the first half of the first period. Swayman kept a minute early, and Pastrnak gets the 1-0 lead. As the second period gets underway, of course it's Lukas Reichel. Of course Lukas Reichel gets his first goal as a Bruin in his first game. He is the 90th player in Bruins history to score in his team debut. Little fun fact there. But Jonathan Aspro dumps the puck in around the glass, hits a stanchion. Connor Hellebuck can't play it properly. Puck squirts out in front of the net, and Reichel beats 2 Winnipeg defenders to the loose puck, 2-0 Boston. So a good feel-good story for Reichel, who I saw Mark Diver online say that the Bruins, Mark Diver covers a lot of the Providence Bruins hockey. And he had heard that organizationally, the Bruins want Lukas Reichel to be better on the walls as a Boston Bruin, as he's been in Chicago's system and Vancouver's. And I'm here to say that Reichel later in the game against the Jets did have one giveaway I can think of, but he also had multiple plays on the breakout on Thursday night where he exemplified patience, didn't rush the pass, didn't turn the puck over, and was able to find the appropriate player in transition to break the puck out. So listen, it's a small sample size, but so far Lukas Reichel has been doing what the Bruins have asked him to do since coming over from Vancouver. So good for him to get involved in the offense early. And then later on in the second period, it's Victor Arvidsson. I still feel like this puck may have gone off of Zacha's arm or something like that. But either way, it was the Arvidsson, Zacha, Middlestat second line who combined for a garbage goal, 3-0 Boston. Big goal. Big goal. To go up 3-0 versus being up 2-1, getting that next goal was huge for Boston. Heading into the third period, Pavel Zacha gets his 23rd of the year, his 8th goal in his last 8 games. So once again, that second line just continuing to carry Boston at 5-on-5 throughout the majority of this season. Beautiful shot by Zacha on a pass from Middlestat. It was a backhander pass to Zacha in the slot. He does a one-timer top right corner, 4-0 Boston. And then it wouldn't be a Bruins game without a holding penalty or stick infraction on Hampus Lindholm. So the Bruins are up 4-0 in the third period. This game should have been over. And obviously, as we know, it would end with a Bruins win. But it's just another example of when you have a team down, you step on their throat, don't give them life. And Hampus Lindholm just can't help himself. He honestly can't help himself. He's like a dog seeing a fire hydrant. He just can't help himself. He has to go piss on it. And I think that Hampus Lindholm, he hasn't, but it feels like he's taken a minor penalty every game this season. Anyway, he goes to the box. Jonathan Taves, yep, he's still in the league. Gets a tip-in power play goal for the Jets. Now it's a 4-1 game, and there's still about 15 minutes or so to go in the game. And Winnipeg now starts to have a surge for about 5 or 6 minutes, and they came damn near close to scoring again a couple of different times to make it 4-2. And in that situation, now you're talking about a 4-2 game with a ton of momentum on Winnipeg's side. And who knows where that game goes? Maybe it turns into a Bruins versus Golden Knights game earlier this year, where Boston saw a 4-0 lead in the third period go to 4-3 before finding a way to close out that game. So the moral of the story is, don't give a team life. Hampus Lindholm, you're up 4-0. There's no reason for a lazy hook in front of your own net. There was just no reason for it. Some penalties he takes, it's because you're trying to prevent a goal. And obviously he was trying to prevent a goal tonight too. But again, when you're up 4-0, you don't do an obvious hook right in front of the ref. Sorry, but you just don't do it. Live to fight another day. Try to lay the body or just, I don't know. But he's always going to the box, and it didn't cost the Bruins, but I just got a feeling that Hampus Lindholm's going to have another few of these moments down the stretch here where we're going to be pulling our hair out because he's putting the Bruins in the box in an opportune time. 4-0 game against Winnipeg, who sucks. You get away with it. But even against Winnipeg, they started to feel it for a bit. Fraser Minten gets his 16th goal of the year on a beautiful play by David Pastrnak, who gets his 57th assist. And Pastrnak just protected the puck behind the goal, came out to the left side of the goal, and just, again, great puck protection, and does a spinorama pass to Minten in front of the net, who buries a one-timer. And that line of Pastrnak, Minten, and Husnudinov, they have been outstanding together this year in their limited time together. They had 89 minutes of playing time together as a line combination heading into Thursday night. I have to imagine that that's going to be somewhere around 105 minutes now, something like that, 106, 7 minutes after Thursday night. And there are 8 Bruins heading into Thursday night. There were 8 different Bruins line combinations who played together this year for at least 89 minutes or more. Among those 8 lines, Pastrnak, Minten, and Husnudinov have the most goals for per 60 of any Bruins line combination who have played in at least 89 minutes or more, which, again, that's the number of minutes that those 3 have played together. So that's why you kind of set that minimum there. They have allowed the second fewest goals against per 60. For reference, David Pastrnak, Elias Lindholm, and Morgan Geekie, among those same 8 line combinations, they are 6th in goals for per 60, and they have the worst goals against per 60. So and again, that's not really a huge surprise to people, because anybody who's watched the Bruins this year would say that Geekie, Lindholm, and Pastrnak, for the most part, haven't been that great. And these numbers exemplify that they're actually a net negative line together. However, Pastrnak, Husnudinov, and Minten, who continue to score at 5-on-5 together. They got 2 more goals today at 5-on-5. I believe that they've been on the ice for at least 4, if not 5-on-5 goals since being put together in the last 10 minutes of the San Jose game. Even though the following game, I think they didn't play together. So what's that? So you have San Jose, Washington. So they didn't play together in Washington. They did in New Jersey, and they did in Montreal. So, and they did against the Jets. So that's 3. So in about 9.5 or so, 9.5 or 10 periods together in the last week and a half, Minten, Husnudinov, and Pastrnak have at least 4 or 5-on-5 goals together. So these stats are going to go up after Thursday's game where they had 2 more 5-on-5 goals together. And I guess I'll ask the question, have they found themselves a new top line? I mean, not just based on the Winnipeg Jets game, but again, they have the most goals for per 60 of any extended line combination on the Bruins for the Bruins this year. So I know it's not really a on paper long-term first line combination, right? Especially when you have players like James Higgins on the way, who we'll see what happens with Higgins. I mean, he still has to finish his season at BC this season. If he loses Friday or Saturday in Hockey East, you may see Higgins Tuesday. If he wins the Hockey East Championship with BC, you may not see him at all this year, maybe for a game. So I think right now, based on the players that they currently have, I think that the Pastrnak, Minten, and Husnudinov line, I think you have to keep it together. You have to keep it together, in my opinion. Okay? So with that said, let's talk about the other line combination that formed on Thursday, because we know that Pastrnak, Minten, and Husnudinov, they click. We sure as hell know that the second line of Zacha, Middlestat, and Arvidsson, they click. So Lukas Reichel, his implementation into Boston's lineup and what it's done in a short sample for a struggling Elias Lindholm and Morgan Geekie. Let's get to the 6th goal on the night for the Bruins, and that was Jonathan Aspro. This goal was with Geekie, Reichel, and Elias Lindholm on the ice. It was the second goal that these 3 were on the ice for at 5-on-5 tonight. Now, Morgan Geekie and Elias Lindholm have been invisible. I want to say heading into Thursday at 5-on-5, Geekie and Lindholm had maybe 0 combined points. I want to say they were last and second to last on the Bruins in 5-on-5 point scoring over their last 10 games heading into Thursday night. Well, sure as shit, you give them a little bit of speed and skill. Not that, playing with Pastrnak isn't that when they've been with him, but compared to Mikey Eyssimont or Alex Steeves, Lukas Reichel certainly has more speed and skill than those 2 players. So Geekie and Lindholm, they definitely knew that they had to step their games up. And regardless of who their line mates are, I think these players are so prideful and they know everybody's talking about them. I don't care how much skill or speed you have or don't have. If you know that you need to perform, at least in terms of effort, you can always bring the effort, right? I mean, you can always get it on the forecheck, always work hard on the back check. And basically what I'm saying is there are going to be some nights where the skill's not there, but the will can be. Okay. So regardless of if their line mate had speed and skill in Lukas Reichel on Thursday, Elias Lindholm and Morgan Geekie better have shown people something on Thursday. And to their credit, they did. And on that Jonathan Aspro goal, Lukas Reichel gets a secondary assist by winning a board battle, right? talked about Mark Divert earlier in board battles. This was an offensive zone board battle. He gets to a loose puck, keeps it in, and Morgan Geekie gets the puck in the slot and gives not a crazy pass, but a simple backhand pass to Jonathan Aspro, who's coming in from the left point, and Aspro has a beautiful finish on Hellebuck. But here's why that's important. Morgan Geekie gets his first 5-on-5 point in over 10 games. And it's a primary assist. And I know it's a blowout game at the time. It's now 6-1 with a couple minutes left to go in the game. But I do think that when you're struggling offensively, and he knows how invisible he's been at 5-on-5. So does Elias Lindholm. It's even carried over to their power play opportunities because they haven't been good in the power play either. But you better believe that a guy like Morgan Geekie feels good about himself tonight, going home, knowing that he had a primary assist. And I know it was a blowout, but you'll take what you can get. So I thought that even outside of that final play, that final shift where they had a goal, I thought Geekie and Lindholm, I didn't think it was perfect. I did not think it was perfect. I think that they were still overthinking things a bit with the puck on their stick, especially in the offensive zone. But you could see their compete was higher. You could see that their motors were going a little bit quicker than they have been. Still not lightning fast, and that's not their game. But I do think that they had a bit of a boost from Reichel. I think they had a bit of a boost knowing that they were playing in front of their home crowd, knowing that they need to play better. And even if Morgan Geekie did not get an assist on that 6th goal, I still would have walked away from that game and said, you know what? They still are struggling to produce, but they looked better. They just looked better. And I do think that getting an assist on the Aspero goal can go a long way for Morgan Geekie's psychology. Okay, so Lukas Reichel, I think you can honestly give him a big hand for helping these two players, because I do think that his speed and skill was refreshing, but I also think it forced Morgan Geekie and Elias Lindholm to simply keep up. But I also think that Reichel forced turnovers, and Reichel made plays happen in transition. He was finding Lindholm and finding Geekie in ways that Steves and Acemont just can't really. You could see the speed and skill on Reichel. And Reichel didn't have, the best game of all time, but it's obvious when you see a player who has speed and skill, it jumps off the page. He's especially on this Bruins team that kind of lacks it. It was pretty obvious that he can make some things happen that not every player in the Bruins can. Only a few can. Like Pasternak makes plays, like, obviously. Husnadinov can make plays. Minton can make plays. Zaka can make plays. Middlestad can make plays. Arvidsson can make plays. But, Geekie can make plays, but he's more of a finisher. So anyway, I think Reichel was a help. I'll put it that way. And going forward, can he be a hidden gem? What's the phrase? One man's trash is another man's treasure. I think that was is that Macklemore? I don't know. But I listen, just because Lukas Reichel didn't pan out in Chicago and he didn't pan out in Vancouver, doesn't mean he's not going to pan out in Boston. Okay, we've talked about before the German connection with him and Marco Sturm, and who knows why he didn't work out in the previous locations. Maybe those spots wanted him to be a center and he feels better at the wing. Who really knows? But sometimes it just takes a little bit of time. Some players they develop later than certain teams want them to or hope they could, and they move on from them. It's actually ironic because there's probably some players in the Bruins system down 95 in Providence that haven't developed the way the Bruins have hoped that they would, and the Bruins haven't given them chances. We'll get to them in a second. But I do think that, listen, it's been one game with Reichel. I'm not going to sit here and say that he's some diamond in the rough just yet, but I do think that he's a former first-round talent or first-round pick. He's a first-round talent still. And for a sixth-round draft pick, maybe we do look back at that trade in a little bit and say, wow, we got a pretty damn good player for a sixth-rounder. And again, he has speed, he has skill, so it's just a matter of, maturity and developing between the ears and having a responsible two-way game at the NHL level, and maybe the Bruins do have something in him. Okay, let us move along now to the mailbag segment of this show. So thank you all for submitting your questions and comments. A lot of them have to do with items we've touched on today, which are Lindholm, Geeky, the Bruins Jets game, and Lukas Reichel, of course. Okay, so let us go to, let's see. Let's go to Eddie on Twitter. Eddie says, so why not Lysell? This is in response to some commentary I had on Lukas Reichel prior to his Bruins debut. I made a comment based on the morning lines at practice with him and Geeky and Lindholm. And so to Eddie, I say, first things first is Fabian Lysell is actually out with the concussion right now in Providence. He got into a fight not too long ago, so literally he can't play. But beyond that, Lukas Reichel and Fabian Lysell are both 23 years old. Lysell has played, 9 NHL games. Reichel has played 188 and now it's 189. And he now has 61 points in 189 games. But basically, that's after Thursday. Heading into Thursday, he had 59 points in 188 games. So I just think that Reichel he's the same age as Lysell. I think I saw some comments that they're a similar profile, and I think that's fair. I think they're both speedsters with skill. I still think that Reichel's better. They can be the same player profile. I still think Reichel's better at that profile. I think he's proven more at the same age as Lysell has, simply put. And while Lysell's out of the lineup in Providence right now because he's hurt, Reichel had 5 points in 3 games over the weekend. So that's why he got the call up. And also, I don't think the Bruins traded for Reichel to have him sit in Providence for 5 years. I think they traded for him knowing that he has played NHL games and is still young enough. And I think the Bruins traded for him knowing he was going to be an NHL player for them. Maybe not the second that they traded for him, but throughout this season and probably to start next year. Bill on Twitter says, I agree. It's worth a shot, although I'd keep the leash short. If it's not working out. Don't want it to be another Oliver Wahlstrom situation who had a long leash seemingly due to a cool goal in mini one-on-one back in the day. Shout out the Portland Junior Pirates. Good little junior hockey program. I don't even know if that team's around anymore or half the leagues I grew up playing in if they're even around anymore. But yeah, I think the Wahlstrom situation, he didn't really produce. I mean, I think if Reichel's not producing, then sure. But so far, so good. Obviously, he has 2 points in his first Bruins game. So if he keeps not that he's going to score at a 2 point per game pace in his career, but if he keeps finding a way to produce, then I think that he'll get an appropriate leash. Vince on Twitter says, the Bruins control their own destiny and tend to rise in high-pressure games. Signs point to them shaking off the post-break funk, but the real game changer will be sliding Morgan Geeky back to the left side, where he's delivered elite-level production over the past 2 seasons. So Vinny is probably the biggest Morgan Geeky fan on the internet, and I'm not gonna piss in his Cheerios at all. Geeky has definitely deserved and earned his fans over the last little while here. But the first part of Vinny's comment has to do with a poll that I put out on Twitter on Thursday, and that was before the Bruins and Jets game. So now, knowing that the Bruins won the game 6-1, I'm sure people feel even better about the question I asked. But I simply asked, with 14 games remaining, will the Bruins make the playoffs? Best guesses, yes or no. And at last check, there was 350 something votes, and 66.7% of voters said yes, 33.3% said no, which honestly I think is pretty fair. I think that I would give the Bruins a 2/3 chance of making the playoffs right now too. So I think that I also would lean yes, but the percentage split here makes a lot of sense to me. And, the Bruins and the Red Wings, prior to Thursday night's action and after the games, they have the same record. They have the same points and the same points percentage. The Bruins have one more regulation win than Detroit. And then the Blue Jackets, by the way, both Detroit and Columbus won in regulation on Thursday night. So if the Bruins didn't win on Thursday night, then they'd really be feeling the pressure right now. And I think they would have been bumped out of the playoffs. But fortunately, the Bruins won, as did Detroit, as did Columbus. Columbus now is 1 point back of Boston. However, they actually leapfrogged the Islanders for third place in the Metropolitan Division. So now it's the Islanders who are right behind the Bruins and Red Wings in the wild card picture. But again, the Islanders and the Blue Jackets have the same amount of points, so it comes down to a tiebreaker. So Vinny thinks the Bruins will make the playoffs. Good. Okay. Let's go to Arnold. Arnold on Twitter says, been saying this for over a week. Last 11 games are tough as hell. Tampa Bay, 2 games. Columbus, 2 games, both on the road. Buffalo, Minnesota, Dallas, Carolina, Florida, maybe tanking. Philly, 2. Just lost to New Jersey last game. These teams are all fighting for seeds. Tough ending. Again, this is in response to the poll on Twitter. So, yeah, Arnold, I mean, the Bruins have a very tough schedule to finish off the season. It's not easy. So I definitely think that it's cause for concern. I think that for a lot of the people who voted no, as I'm going to assume that you may have voted no, but I think that it's valid. Like, you have Columbus twice, both in Columbus, as you stated. You have Detroit on Saturday night, so that's a huge game in Detroit. And the Bruins have not been a good road team. So, that's not even talking about playing Minnesota and Dallas and Carolina still. And, the Panthers might be on the outside looking in, but they're still the Florida Panthers, injured or not. They're still a team capable of beating you on any given night. So, yeah, I think that, listen, the Bruins are going to have to earn their way. It's not going to be easy. And the way that Detroit and Columbus are playing, and Ottawa and the Islanders and Montreal, no one's letting up right now. The only time these teams seem to be losing is when they play each other and somebody has to. Like the Islanders played the Senators tonight, and the Senators beat the Islanders with 11 seconds to go in regulation. The Red Wings beat the Canadiens in the last minute and a half of regulation. The only time these teams lose is when they play each other. So, yeah, Boston's strength of schedule down the stretch here is not a fun one for them. Boston Strong on Twitter, better option than Lysell, Poitras, and Merkulov at the NHL level. This is in reference to Lukas Reichel. I agree. I definitely agree, especially with Poitras. Patra is not somebody who has shown he can play the wing at the NHL level. Reichel can. In fact, Reichel is preferable at wing. Lysell does not have the details, does not have the two-way play. And quite frankly, I don't even think he has – his hands are good. They're okay, but his decision-making at the NHL level is very slow. Reichel's been there. He's done that. He's not a finished product, but he's at least played nearly 200 games at the NHL level. And if you watched him on Thursday, you would have agreed that he has some pretty good hands. Merkulov, I don't think he has the speed to make plays at the NHL level that he can make at the AHL level. The game happens quicker, and when your time and space is taken away, then it's tough to make the same plays at the higher level than you do at the lower level. Mark O. Sturm, very creative on Twitter. Nice to see them mix it up. I'm really hoping they can add Higgins to that line and inject some life into it. So, again, in reference to Reichel, I think that's a interesting conversation that we'll be having if and when Higgins enters the lineup, because Reichel does provide speed and skill that if he wasn't in the organization right now, maybe the Bruins would feel like that's Higgins' job to provide the second BC's season ends. But I wonder, now listen, I think Higgins is signing with the Bruins the second that BC's season ends, but we don't know when that is. Is it this weekend? Is it in a couple of weeks? These things matter. And I could see a world where BC wins the Hockey East Championship Saturday, BC goes to the national NCAA tournament, and James Higgins can't even wear the black and gold until there's a game or two left in the regular season. And maybe by that point, Lukas Reichel has carved out a role for himself as that speed and skill guy in the short term on that third line. And maybe when Higgins does become available, maybe he still hops right into the lineup in Boston with or in place of Reichel. Or maybe the Bruins say, you know what, James, we got a game left in Boston. We got Reichel right now. Why don't you go down to Providence and, go on a Calder Cup run, and we will, we'll have a spot for you in the top 6 come training camp. Maybe it's something like that. Or maybe Higgins does lose this weekend for BC, and he's ready to go into the lineup on Tuesday. And in that situation, yeah, maybe, I don't know if they'd be on the same line, but I would be curious to see what they do. What do you do in that situation? Right? Because Reichel is already in the lineup for Steves / AC Mont, right? So who's coming out? Right? You have a top line of Husnadinov, Pasternak, and Minton. None of those guys are being scratched. Arvidsson, Middlestat, Zaka. None of those guys are being scratched. Lindholm, Geeky, and Reichel. All right. Are you scratching Reichel for Higgins, or do you want them on the same line? If you want them on the same line, then are you scratching Geeky or Lindholm? I know there's fans out there that would say in a heartbeat, but let's be realistic here. Are the Bruins going to scratch more Geeky or Elias Lindholm? I don't think so. And then the fourth line is just not really a line that you want Higgins on anyway. It's not even a conversation. It's a totally different skill set. And you're not taking out Kastler, Corrali, or Jeannot because they're doing what their job is in the fourth line. So, I don't know. The addition of Reichel does kind of – is there a lineup right now with him and Higgins in it? If everybody's healthy? I don't know. It's something to keep an eye on. It's a good question. Mark Osterm. Mark Allred from Black and Gold Productions. Kid came to work as soon as he joined the organization, reporting to Providence. Smart. One recall for the Bees, as you mentioned, to see what you have here. Yeah. So again, about Reichel, one thing that's interesting about Reichel is that I'm not really sure what Mark means with the 1-5. That might be me. I might be totally blanking on that. It's a little bit late right now. But one thing that's interesting about the Reichel call-up is that he was an emergency call-up. And that's interesting because there are no real injuries on Boston right now. So it's a little bit of a gamesmanship going on there, some cap circumventing where I believe you're only allowed so many traditional call-ups after the trade deadline. So the Bruins are getting creative here with an emergency call-up, and I'm sure if the league were to call up Mikey Asimont or Alex Steves and ask how they're doing, I'm sure they would talk about some phantom bruise on their leg or something that they're dealing with. Rob Dudley on X, seriously, am I crazy or did Reichel rejuvenate both of them, meaning Geeky and Lindholm? Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, I think that Reichel's speed and skill, it forced Lindholm and Geeky to play to that speed or close to it to keep up. I also think that Lindholm and Geeky knew that it's put up or shut up time, and like your team's trying to make the playoffs. You're relied upon players. It's time to pick your shit up, and I think that's kind of what you saw on Thursday as well. Real Bruins on Twitter says, will be tough to make an impact if Geeky and Lindholm continue to be ghosts out there. Well, again, he's talking about Reichel and Real Bruins. I agree with you heading into Thursday, but your key word there was if they continue to be ghosts out there. And again, to Geeky and Lindholm's credit, they did perform better on Thursday than they have been. Kyle on X, playing with Lindholm and Geeky, plus being on the wing, less responsibility should help. Reichel centered Foligno and Smith. Yes, they are Bruins legends last year. Even though Lindholm and Geeky had their woes recently, it's a clear upgrade for all parties. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think Reichel entering the lineup as a winger with a responsible center and Lindholm, a guy who can finish off plays in Geeky when he's on his game, certainly upgrades over Foligno and Craig Smith. And I do think it's a comfortable way to insert yourself into the lineup for the first time. You know, I would feel that same way about James Higgins. If Reichel never got called up and it was Asimont and Steves until Higgins was in Boston, I would say the same thing about Higgins. Again, which goes back to a couple of questions ago. I'm curious what the Bruins do if Higgins is available as soon as next week, and you know him and Reichel could be in the lineup. I see a lack of opportunity for both of them right now based on the other line combinations, but who knows? Last one here from Matt Luongo on X. Matt says, thought Geeky had his most positively noticeable game and clearly his hardest skating effort since the break. Lindholm still looks super slow and almost disinterested. So I'm guessing he's back. His back is re-injured or something is severely hampering him. Seems more than a funk. Yeah, Matt. I mean, that's what a lot of people are saying as well, that Elias is dealing with something. And again, it's tough to really make that excuse because how many guys are playing hurt this time of year. But if it's a back thing, back injuries certainly are more debilitating than probably most anything else in terms of your ability to skate. I mean, obviously like a leg injury, something like that, of course, but back injuries definitely slow you down and they're no fun. That being said, I guess I don't know. I don't know what Elias Lindholm's health bill says right now. I'm sure a lot of guys are hurt. I'm sure he's one of them. I don't know exactly what he's dealing with. Does he look disinterested? Yeah, kinda. But I think that's just how he looks. Like I don't. I'm sure when Elias Lindholm's interested, he looks disinterested. I think that some people just have that demeanor to them where they don't really. I don't know. He has that demeanor. I don't know how else to put it, but I think he looked better tonight. I'll be fair to Lindholm. I don't think he looked very fast, but I do think he was a little bit more involved at 5-on-5 tonight than I've seen him in quite some time. So I do want to give him his not his flowers, but I'll acknowledge that he had some scoring chances 5-on-5. He was part of some transitional plays 5-on-5. Whoa, oh, take it easy, Brian. I know it's crazy. Those are crazy things to be doing. No, I know that's basic shit. I know, but we haven't seen it lately for quite some time. So now that I have seen it a little bit, I have to call it out. I think that's bare minimum. I'm not saying it's anything crazy, but and then yeah, Geeky. I think Geeky was fighting. He's still fighting confidence in the offensive zone. You could still see him overthinking. There was a few times against the Jets where he had a chance to shoot the puck in the offensive zone, and he kind of pump faked and held on to it, and that's just a sign of somebody who's not feeling very confident. But to the point I made earlier, hopefully that primary assist on the Jonathan Aspero goal can go a long way for Morgan's confidence. Okay, so things to keep an eye on. Big game on Saturday. Bruins in Detroit. This is a playoff game. This is a playoff game. Your 2 games against every game going forward is a playoff game, of course. But your 2 games in Columbus, those are legit playoff games. Those are unofficial playoff games. Your game Saturday against the Red Wings in Detroit, that's a playoff game. Win that game, and you do yourself a huge favor, okay? And then lastly, just keep an eye on the horizon for James Higgins. BC plays Friday against, I want to say, UConn. Okay, hockey semifinals at the Garden. If BC wins that game, then we'll be watching Saturday to see if he wins a Hockey East championship. If he wins a Hockey East championship, the James Higgins watch is going to go quiet for a bit because he'll be occupied for a couple more weeks, and it may or may not align with the end of the Bruins regular season. But if BC loses Friday or Saturday, I think you'll see James Higgins in a Bruins sweater on Tuesday against the Maple Leafs, okay? So we'll keep an eye on all of these things. With all of that said, thank you very much for listening. Enjoy the Bruins game over the weekend, and I'll be back on Monday to talk to you all. Take care.